Welcome to the family who builds. My name's Don. Have you ever wondered what holds your floor up? How it's even built? Or maybe how it works? Or why do we do what we do? Well, that's what we're going to go over today. So, we're all learning, and we're trying to bring you great content and grow the channel. Please subscribe, like, and drop a comment. All of those little things really help this video get out there. In our other videos, we put the floor joist down and the subfloor on it. I'm going to grab some of those short clips from a couple of the videos. I feel like it'll be easier just to show you what the end result is. So let's get started. We have a term in home building called stacking. Whenever you take a stud and then you put a floor joist directly over it, you stack it. Then maybe start several stories down, and at the bottom, keep everything on top of each other. All the walls, the joist, as many trusses as you can. Now you've stacked them. This keeps all your loads in one straight line. The idea is to minimize movement. These sorts of things are important for the longevity of your home, especially because the quality of building materials seems to be going down with time. Now, when you walk into the front door of your home, let's assume you're walking onto a floor or a subfloor. Subfloors might be the first floor or maybe even the second floor, or even higher up, like in a hotel. Typically, the top of the subfloor is built with a sheeting-like material called plywood or OSB. Keep in mind that the material used is directly determined by the area that you're in and its exposure to the elements. Now, directly under that subfloor material is what is typically called a joist. Here in the Midwest, we mostly use three types of joist. Now, in our area, floor trusses are the least popular due to cost. Another type of joist would be an engineered joist. And the final joist would be made from dimensional lumber, such as 2x8s, 2x10s, 2x12s. So, you might begin to notice this is getting a little complicated with some major choices. And it can be, but stay with me. This system works on spans or distances from one support to another. The larger the span, the more weight the joist must be able to support. So during the design phase, these spans can continue to grow in distance, and these distances can require engineered materials, and sometimes the spans are so long and the span must be shortened by the addition of beams or bearing walls. For example, you might have a bearing wall down the center of your home that you didn't even know about, or maybe a large metal beam buried behind some drywall or plaster, completely out of sight. For the purpose of this video, let's focus on dimensional lumber. Something to understand is structural dimensional lumber is graded. The better the grade, the further it can span. The lower the grade, the less it can span. And for reference, higher grade materials are typically more expensive than lower grade materials. So when building a home, cost versus quality is definitely a juggling act. Now, without a doubt, when building a home, following the joist span tables are critical for the longevity of the house. If a joist is overloaded or overspanned, the joist at minimum will have bounce and deflection. Worst case scenario is failure and the floor falls in. So here's where it can get a little more complicated. Joists can be on lots of different spacing. For example, it can be on 24-inch, 19.3, 16-inch, 12-inch, 8-inch, or multiples of those exact same distances nailed together at any of those spacing. Just as I mentioned, everything on a subfloor is hinged around loads and spans. So, now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's go over what we as carpenters are doing to build this floor. Now, all three of us are working together, and this will take no time. To make sure we keep the joist lined up, we snap a line from front to back. That now becomes a reference point. This floor joist layout is designed to be on 16-inch centers. So, I've hooked my tape measure on the outside corner of the house. Now, further along in the build, we will add plywood to that corner. I also want to make sure that plywood from up above is able to wrap and touch that same place. To make that happen, I'm subtracting a 1/2 inch from the measurement on my tape. This allows me to account for the 1/2 inch of OSB that will be there later on. Now, here is the most important part. This house has utilities that will need to be installed at a later date. The two utilities that I'm concerned about are plumbing and heating and cooling. We need to make sure that all the floor joists are out of the way of these utilities. For example, on the plumbing side, if we put a floor joist in the middle of a toilet, local building codes may not allow us to relocate the toilet, and we'll have to move the joist. Let's say that this particular home gets a walk-in shower and we install a joist directly in the way of the floor drain. Well, that may need to get moved as well. The heating and cooling companies rely on airflow. Without it, the systems they use cannot perform as designed. We as framing carpenters need to be aware of this. We need to stack our interior walls above the floor joists. This gives the trades behind us the maximum amount of space for them to do their job. There's also some places that are just as important. Have you ever thought about the weight of a kitchen island with a solid surface countertop like granite or quartz? Well, it's heavy, really heavy. It could be so heavy that it's like parking a car in the middle of your kitchen. Joists may need to be doubled up or tripled up to carry that load. A load-bearing beam might need to be added in the basement or below it. Same thing applies to large bathtubs. Thousands of pounds of extra weight can easily be added and then removed. This could cause the floor joist to deflect or sag. The interior walls will most likely move with the joist, and if roof trusses are installed on the home, they will most likely separate from the wall, and a drywall crack will develop. Let's talk about building the staircase opening. This has the potential to really slow down the building process if a mistake is made with a staircase. We always make sure to check those drawings before laying out the staircase. This helps to minimize the mistakes. Sometimes the staircase opening may be located under a wall that must be squared up later. For example, let's say that the staircase opening is behind a kitchen or a bathroom. Those really are the areas in a house that need to be square. This is particularly important because a stair opening that goes from the first floor into a basement is depending on the squareness of the foundation and not the squareness of the walls above. This is where checking the squareness of the foundation becomes important. Now is the time to make an adjustment if something is wrong. If we are building with dimensional lumber, the staircase opening in our area typically has two joists nailed together and will go from one bearing point to another. For example, an outside bearing point might be a foundation wall, and an inside bearing point might be somewhere on a beam on the interior of the house. Now, after the longer joists are nailed together and installed, we typically have a smaller, doubled up joist on both ends. This usually sits in hangers that are designed to carry that load, and this might be where additional joists are attached. This entire system of doubled up joists is so important because as the house progresses, either a wall or stair railing will be mounted to those doubled up joists. Before we go over the final component, I'd like to take the time to ask you to support the channel with a no cost, no obligation comment or like. If you like our videos and want to learn more about home building, please subscribe, and we'll do our best to make videos that are easy to watch and informative. Well, we made it to the last and final component that I would like to talk about. Introducing the band board. Now, a band board runs around the entire outside distance of the subfloor. A band board transfers weight around the floor system and moves it to the bearing member below. Now, this might be the foundation, a wall, or maybe even a beam. Without a band board, the entire weight that comes from the roof passed into the walls and then transferred into the floor system could cause the floor joist to fail. It also provides rack strength to the floor system. Without a band board that runs perpendicular to the joist, the entire floor system could easily roll over and fail. This would be a catastrophic failure to the home and would leave it unlivable. A band board could be made from the same material as the floor joist or a completely different material. Now, we talked about the three main types of floor joists that we use. The first, and least popular in our area, is the floor trusses. Floor trusses do not typically have a band board. Second, Being the engineered systems have a band board specific to the system, and they are engineered and tested to work together. When using dimensional lumber for floor joists, the same joists are normally used as a band board. To install the rim boards, nails are driven into the joist, into the bearing member below. The exact nailing patterns are specific to the type and the size of the system that you're using. Not all things in this area are created equal. Some require more nails, some require less. That's something that you're going to have to check with, especially if it's a truss component, an engineered component, or if it's just dimensional lumber. A lot more goes into a floor system than one might think. Spans, weights, flooring finishes, allowable deflection, and number of stories. It all matters. Stay tuned for more videos. And from us to you, happy building.